talk is Breeding Unicorn Developers by Tim Bourguignon. Is
Wow.
that correct?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
I was thinking about introducing him as the crazy French guy, but and I think that would be technically correct, but I think then you wouldn't know how much I respect him. He's funny, he's creative, and he really gets the soft skills side of software development, and I hope he now tells us what he means by unicorn.
Thank you, David. Well, let's try that. Let's fake a little bit of speaker view in there. Where is it? Okay. So, it's impressive to see that many people that came here to speak about mythical beasts. Of course, I mean developers by that. What the fuck? Okay. Gonna get there, gonna get there. There you go. Okay, all of you here to speak about mythical beasts. Cool, cool, great. You're in the right track. That's great. Let's start with one quote, just to get you started. It's the following: always code as if the guy who will end up maintaining your code is a violent psychopath that knows where you live. Let it sink a little bit. Now, I would like you to think a little bit about your first job and the first commits you did in a professional environment. So, or if it was before commits existed, the first code you produced and pushed to production. I see funny faces, okay? I think you had the same kind of experience that I did. My first experience professionally was, well, a few before, but the real one was during my master's thesis. I was working in Germany over there. I was building rule engines. I used pretty much the whole spectrum of mathematics I had learned in college. I was really proud of that. I had used all the technical side of OOP that I knew, inheritance all over the place. I was very proud of that. There were even a couple tests. So yeah, it was great, wasn't it? A few years down the line, or maybe months down the line, I realized it was actually crappy. It did the job. The solution was there. I did actually optimize stuff, but it was impossible to use. The API was really awful, and I assumed the thing never went to production. But it's okay. I'm still here talking to you. Now you're amazed, right? Okay, so if I see the faces I just saw there, I think there's a trend. And I want to make this hypothesis. The majority of students who come out of universities today have no clue what we mean. What we need as an industry is a mystery to them. Who's here in the first job or just barely out of the studies anymore? Okay, just experienced guys. Right. Given my past experience in the last few years, I would go one step further and say a lot of people who have been in the work for a few years still don't have any clue what we need. For that, I need to present myself a little bit and talk about my hunting lessons. My name is Tim. I come from France, as a crazy French guy, David said. I worked in the US and moved to Germany 10 years ago. I've been working in Germany now for about 10 years. I was a developer. Now I'm not allowed to commit anymore in a professional workplace. I became an agile coach, so well, going through the whole spectrum in between. So doing all kind of projects, development support, third level support, greenfield development, legacy code, and everything in between. Leading teams. So I tried a bit of everything and ended up at the first stage of incompetency as a coach. Well, my last years, I coached teams and helped them staff up. That means it's a JE project with a lot of developers and getting a lot of people on board. That means something like 200 profiles screened, 100-something telephone interviews, and then job interviews, etc. That's just for the last job I did. And the previous jobs were as well very job interviews there were a lot of them. And I kind of always have this feeling that something's not right. The guys who are sitting or standing or on the telephone line with me, they just don't get it. Am I the only one who has this feeling? I don't know. They are telling me about their GE experience and all the things they did. And when I asked, okay, but why is your history like this? Why did you go there? And what did you do that? And there you went away from Java and did some C++. Why did you do that? And the common answer is, okay, they didn't think about this. So I came up with this kind of balance. For me, the technical side is something like 20%. So if the guy is good in Java, well, he's 20%. He's good. So in my ranking is, yeah, he could be. If he's excellent, then he might be a good 22. That's, yeah. But then if he can communicate, then he's jumping to 30. And if he can tell me about his history and telling me where he wants to go, he's a 40. And if he can pair and share his experience and teach, he's a 60. So this is all those skills that are absolutely not technical are just multipliers on this. And those express my kind of relaxability. So when I see this, I start to relax and say, okay, this guy will fit. He's going to do the job. He's going to be good. And this is how I've kind of built it up in the last years. And recently I started reading the book How to Win Friends and Influence People from Dale Carnegie. And I was abashed that he goes even one step further. He said that financial success is to 85% on the soft skills and 15% on the technical skills. So he's even crazier than I am. Well, whatever. So I said, who can do something about it? Well, it's all of us. And since I'm not the one to say, well, you should do it, I started doing it. That's why I stand here. That's why I started writing a book about this. It's called Developer's Journey. That's why I started doing interviews. That's why I'm trying to do a podcast. I'm trying to make noise about this because it just pisses me off. This is impossible to have so many interviews and so many people that just don't fit at all what we need. The book is ongoing. It's going to be something like 40 essays. And pay attention to that. It's not solutions. I'm not giving you the solution how to be a great worker in the workplace. What I want to bring is just this thought-triggering sparkle, just to make you realize that there is something that you have to dig in there. So if it's pair programming, because you have never heard about this, then you will start to learn about it or search about it. Maybe you will be triggered. I don't want to bring you answers because there are books that are that thick and that are just tackling one topic that I tackle in 3 or 4 pages. So that's not the point. For this talk, I decided to pick 9 of those and just go a bit further in the next 33 minutes. Well, I hope those topics will follow you in your career and you can come to think about them once in a while and you say, okay, where was I a few years ago and where am I now? Has something changed? I don't know. And maybe you will radiate this information to some other persons. Of course, I'm not the only one to think like this. Yeah, I identified at least 3 books. The first one is The Passionate Programmer. I hope it's readable. From Chad Fowler. Stefan spoke about Chad Fowler this morning. Steven, sorry, about Chad Fowler this morning. There was a guy that says, yeah, you should throw away your good code as well. He's really good. Soft Skills from John Sandmez and Software++ from Corey Berg. Those 3 books are pretty good. Just dive in. They're really, really on the right path. But I still think there is something to do, so I continued. I don't think I have all the knowledge myself, so I interviewed some people using some examples. There are developers, there are architects, freelancers that are doing a bit of development, a bit of architect, a bit of mentoring. Then 2 really interesting, Jens and Michael, those 2 here, who are identify themselves as mentor and mentee. It was really interesting to see them speak and really synergize on this whole interview. And it goes up to Agatha, who is a department lead in a big healthcare company now, and used to be a developer in one of teams parallel to mine, and Amitai, an agile coach. So really interesting persons with very, very broad spectrum of careers and interests who brought me a lot of ideas. Sometimes brought me out of a local minimum, where I was a bit too focused on one topic, and crystallized some ideas I had. And the 9 topics I'm going to introduce are pretty much the one that crystallize out of those interviews. The topics I want to introduce are spread out in 3 categories. Well, you always have to split things in 3, right? So there are 3 categories, and then in each here are 3 topics. Technology, collaboration, and yourself. So it's not just soft skills, purely soft skills. There's also a bit of technology in there, and we're going to jump right into this. Technology. But you're going to see it's not that technological. So for me, all those topics are things you should really consider in your upcoming journey as a developer, or because we're in the new ways to manage tracks. If you manage developers, or if you are in contact with developers, you are enablers, and you have to push them, kick them sometime a bit in this path so that they go in this path as well. So the first part is be a clean coder. And by this, I mean clean coder as in Clean Code, the book from Uncle Bob. You may like it or not. Actually, I don't care. I think it's a starting point. And we have to start there. Because this is kind of established as a standard now in a part of our industry. So we have to go there. The book was written in 2009 from Uncle Bob, and focuses, this is my essence of the book, on readability. Why that? Because this is how you program nowadays. Just code a little bit, then you go grab a coffee. It takes between seconds and minutes, depending if you're building something or not. You come back, and you've got legacy code. Yeah. Right, it's something you wrote something like minutes ago, but still you have to put that up in your RAM again. It has to go up in your brain, it has to boot up, and you have to build up the whole structure in your brain again. Readability is really important, because you're going to read this stuff. So now imagine you're working on the code of one guy that left the company 2 years ago and wrote the code 3 years ago, and nobody has touched this thing ever since. Yeah, this is the other end of the spectrum. So let's take a very small analogy. Since I'm French, it's going to be cooking. But not just cooking. If we want to compare software engineering and cooking, we have to speak about cooking in a restaurant. So not just at home, but in a restaurant. That means we are talking about servings per evening. How many servings can we do one evening? How efficient are we in the kitchen? Do we need 5 people? Do we need 10 people? Do we need 15 people? I don't know. Can we reproduce that? The meal that is served at 7 p.m. on Monday needs to be exactly the same as the one that serves in 22 p.m. On Friday. Yeah, it starts being a bit complicated. How do they do that? Well, they have rules. The knives go there, and the cutting boards go there. The frying pans go over there, where the oven is. And whenever you do something, you just clean up afterward. It's a rule. It's like that. You just do it, clean up, and you leave the place how it was. There are multiple factors that influence this. Well, if you don't do that, the guy who is coming next to you, who's going to work at this workplace afterward, is going to have to clean up first. He's slower. You were faster, he's slower. If you have a new guy coming in your kitchen, well, he pretty much knows where things are. Well, if he sees the knives over there, well, the cutting boards should be somewhere around. It wouldn't make sense to put them here. And if you need some oil to fry stuff, it doesn't make sense to put it here if you're going to fry up there. So this is common sense. Well, common sense is a big thing. This is common sense. So how do we bring common sense in our code? I think clean code is a start. Why do we do that? Because of complexity. You know, there's 2 kinds of complexity. There is essential complexity and accidental complexity. Essential complexity is pretty much, well, rocket science is complicated because it's rocket science. That's the way it is. It's complicated. Accidental complexity is a measure of how much we suck. We're doing something, we're lazy, we're cutting corners, we're not doing it right. We're introducing technical debt. This is accidental. we could have done otherwise. This is okay for some time, but then we have to clean up. And if we don't, then we have a messy kitchen. And this is not okay. I think the starting point to cleaning this up is being a clean coder. Start there. There's a lot more in clean code. It goes about architecture, organic growth, about emergent architecture, etc. This is very important as well, but the readability part is really the basis. And then just go ahead with it. And you can read this book every year for the next 10 years. You will always find something new. It's an amazing book. Okay, so reducing technical debt and cleaning up your kitchen. This is very important. Keep that in mind. The second part is be a quality Balrog. You shall not pass. Yeah. Bugs are a problem. Well, that's true. And I need you to be the guy that says excellent work only. So it needs to be clean and needs to be tested. What does it mean, excellent? Well, tested. The tests need to be reproducible. They need to be sustainable. They need to be reliable. They need to be, well, actually automated. If you don't have all this, then you don't have tests. And if you don't have tests, you don't have a Balrog saying, no bugs, you shall not pass. And if you don't have that, then you have bugs in your code base, and then everything falls apart. This is the second thing I need to see. If I, as a manager, start pushing somebody and say, well, you don't have to write tests, that's okay, we need the thing in production now. And he says, oh, cool, okay, you just git, push, hop, no. I need people that's gonna start sweating and tell me, well, I don't know how I can say that, but no, that's not okay. No, we have some rules, and even if we didn't have the rules, I don't feel right doing this. I need that kind of person. I need a person that, in the end, maybe I will pull out my red card and say, nope, I'm manager, it's the way it is. And yes, you will get some time afterward to clean up, but as long as I don't do that, he should be pushing back. And if he's not, then I'm not happy. That's not something I want to see in a developer. How do you do that? Well, actually, I don't care. Just be a test junkie. You can do it in TDD, BDD, whatever, DD, unit test, integration test. Go wild with Selenium or whatever Silk framework that you want. I don't care. Just make sure that it's tested and show me that I can rely on you, that you are taking care of this. This is being a test junkie, and this is very important. Why is it important? Because this gives us freedom to experiment. If the code is clean, and if it's tested, then we know we can experiment, because the code is as clean as it could be, and we can just fumble around and do stuff, and if we break something, somebody is going to tell us. There's nothing worse than not knowing that it's going to break. We're going to come back to this complexity, but to this experimenting. The real problem here is fear of accidental complexity. If you fear changing something, then we have a big problem, a big, big, big problem. Last part on the technical side, well, I need you to be a tools master. And for that, let's take a driving analogy. You're not the driver this time, you're on the passenger seat. And the guy driving next to you is driving on a highway, and you realize, and you didn't really see it, but now you realize it. In the past 15 minutes you've been driving, he's only used the first, second, and third gear. And you're now on the highway, driving maybe 100 per hour, and he's still in the third gear. How would you react? You might say, well, you know, there's maybe a fourth one, you could use it, maybe a fifth one, sometimes a sixth one. Well, now you're in the workplace, and you see a guy that's gonna rename a function and start going in the signature and start renaming this, then building, and then seeing all the places where it breaks, and then jump to these places and start changing the name of the function. Not even copy-pasting, just changing the thing per hand. Well, this drives me nuts. This is not okay. If you're working in Visual Studio or Eclipse or even VI, there is functions to do that. You go on the signature, you press Ctrl-R, or you press whatever function there is there, and you change all the signatures and all the codes at the same time. This is exactly the same as driving third gear on the highway. This is unacceptable. If you're spending more than a few hours per week in one tool, You have no excuse to know it inside out. So there I just bashed a bit IDEs, but this goes way further. Are there Java developers here? Yeah. Did you look at the lambdas in Java 8? Yeah. All of you? Well, if you start going to Java 8, you have no excuse not to know lambdas. It's something new. Well, you could have it on Java 7 or C# 3.5. That was a .NET bashing, sorry. Well, you have no excuse not knowing what the language can. You have no excuse not to deep dive in there. Your stack, if you're working in JEE or on whatever ISP or Rails, you have no excuse to know what this thing, not to know what this thing does. You should be aware of those things. I don't expect you to know all the inside outs from your mind off and just tell me everything about it. But you should know it's there, and you should know how to find out where the information is. This goes for your language, your stack, your frameworks, your CI tools, your build tools, your source control tools, and everything you do. I would even go as far as saying your OS, and if you're using Linux and going on grepping things and analyzing log files, you should know this as well. If you don't know that, well, you're driving with a third gear on the highway, and you're not as efficient as you could be. And this is unacceptable. So this is all your dev toolbox, and it goes way beyond that. It goes, well, kind of meta way of doing things. All that I'm explaining now, so this technical part, and then the collaboration part, and then the yourself part are also part of your toolbox. So you have to know this as well. And this is what I'm trying to do with these talks and books, is to bring this at least in your toolbox. You don't have to master it yet, but at least know that it's there. And that's very important. The last part, I want to remove the driving from the driving. Everybody has a driving license, right? When you first started driving, you're probably thinking, okay, now I'm in second gear, I need to push a little bit top, it's gonna shift in the middle, and then I can push again to go in third, or just go up, right, up, that's gonna do. Well, now, you don't realize. Sometimes you probably have to look at it and say, oh, I was in fourth already. Didn't remember that. What is important in there? Well, while you were thinking about switching from second to third, the guy in front of you was braking, and you realized that maybe 200 milliseconds later. This is unacceptable. If you're not concentrated on your design and on what the code is doing, and you're concentrated on what the UI is doing, or how you're gonna refactor this stuff, then you're not concentrated on the right stuff. If you're going to miss some kind of psychomatic complexity that you're going to introduce in your code, you're going to miss that you're here introducing some tight coupling between your classes. You're going to miss all this stuff. Maybe you're going to catch them afterward. Maybe. That would be the good part. But I would assume a lot of times we just miss that up. So you have to remove the driving from the driving. You have to know your tools inside out to be able to be efficient at what you do. And this was the technical side. Now, let's jump to the collaboration, and let's start with a very criticized topic, pairing. This is, for me, the silver bullet. If you don't agree with that, well, we need to talk. And we need to talk. Well, we have to talk about speed versus speed. The first argument that comes against pair programming is, well, when you put two people in front of one computer doing one task, it's not as efficient as when you put two people in front of two computers with two tasks. And I say, yes, you're right. But only for simple tasks and things that are not too repetitive, because then when those two factors increase, you get messy. You get bugs. And there you have some kind of problem that comes very fast. How much does it cost to solve a bug versus how much did you lose when two people were working on the same task? All the analysis that were done on teams that worked with and without pairing says the same thing. Pairs tend to decrease the amount of bugs they introduce. Yes, they seems to be slower, but they decrease the amount of bugs they introduce by a very, very large amount. So this, for me, is a return on investment. For very small tasks, you're going to be a bit slower, but as soon as the complexity increases, then you're winning. You're just winning. And this is just one factor. Knowledge transfer. Why is it that when you come in a team, the first 2 weeks is always pairing? They say, yeah, great, we're going to ramp you up and you're going to be so productive and in 2 weeks you can fly on your own. I say, why only after 2 weeks we should swap to something else? We were very productive like this. Are we really going to be twice as productive now? No, we're not. So why not continue? This is something I don't understand. You don't have to do 0 or 1. We're in computer science, so we love zeros and ones. You don't have to work either 0 hours a day in pair programming and then 8 hours a day, or 12, or 15. In pair programming, just do part and part. There are some stuff that you can do alone, and there's some stuff that you should be doing in pairs. And don't let anyone tell you, no, in this situation it didn't work, so let's just throw the baby with the bathwater and never do that again. That's not acceptable. It's a mindset, and some people dislike it. Yes, that's true. You have to work with them. You have to use your soft skills and start understanding why they don't. Maybe they are not confident about themselves. Maybe they have this fear of being found out, that they couldn't program. They've been here for 10 years and actually they cannot program. That never happened to me. In all the people I introduced to pair programming, there was always some kind of fear of something that we could tweak out and that we managed to solve. Just go ahead and try. And if I can make one hiring comment, try to hire people that can pair program. People that can pair program can also work alone, but the opposite is not true. So this is something that I very often use in interviews. Just ask their experience with pair programming. And you will see who has really tried it, because there will be some praise and some really big critic coming. And somebody that has never tried it will say, well, it's cool. Or we say, no, I don't like it, but cool. It has no experience. It's obvious. Well, if we're doing pairing on the job, why not pair on our life or on your career? This is what I call mentoring. This is pairing for life. You get a partner, and with this person, you're going to work together and a follow-up over many months on your career, on the relations you had, on projects, on whatever you want. But you have somebody that's going to mirror your ideas, mirror what you do, and give you back the impression you give. Why don't we do that? If we look back at the whole... Okay. No, yeah, 30 minutes. Well, if you look back at the antiquity and Plato, Socrates, etc., they were all mentoring each other. And then the whole Renaissance and Middle Age, where they were also guys teaching your kids, well, for the rich folks anyway, teaching your kids day in, day out, all the things you should know. This is kind of mentoring. Why don't we do that anymore? I don't understand. You want to be a mentor? Well, few people say yes. I think anyone can be a mentor. Anyone. It's great if you have somebody that maybe went the way or followed the path you want to go. That could be easier. But actually, somebody that can ask questions and mirror what you're doing and just show you the effect of it can be a great mentor already. You have no excuse not to start. And as a mentor, it's really a very gratifying experience. So not just altruistic, but a lot of egoism as well. What can you do? Well, whatever you want. Just start discussing, do some projects together, just try to commit something on an open source project. I don't care, review some books, but start talking. And it's going to change your life, really. Yeah, that was what we do. Let's go one step further. One part of mentoring is teaching. As a mentor, you're teaching. You know this quote, when you never really learned something until you taught it. Well, that's very true. When you prepare yourself to give a talk to someone, you try to fix all the cracks and all the gaps in the knowledge that could come as a question. And usually the questions come exactly somewhere else that you didn't identify, and then you have to patch up while explaining, and you realize some things, and you end up being a better person. You end up understanding more about the topic you were presenting. Well, why don't you do that? I'm sure you do, but all the guys that are not here at the conference, you have to radiate this information further. So this is learning by teaching. There's also solving by teaching. Who has that kind of duck on his computer? Nobody? Oh, you're in for a treat. Do you know the Stack Overflow effect? You have a problem. You want to ask that question on Stack Overflow. You say, okay, I know per experience if I ask a crappy question, I'm not going to get an answer, or I'm going to get obvious answers that I tried already, so I need to really solidify this question. You start typing everything you know, the things you tried, the things you didn't try, and explain why you didn't try it. And then after that much of a question, you said, God damn it, I have it. That was so easy. And there you have the answer. And you never end up posting that question because it was so easy, and well, you should post it anyway, but that's another topic. I have so many questions that were never posted. And this is called rubber duck problem solving. Some people just, again, some people put a rubber duck here on their screen. Well, it doesn't work on the surface, but I just tell him, well, I have a problem. I cannot solve this thing. Well, why did you try? I tried. And by doing this, you're just solving your own problem. Well, because you're formulating, because you're preparing a talk, because you're condensing information for somebody else. This is teaching. This is the second part of teaching. Where can you do that? Well, in front of your computer, obviously. You can do that in meetups, conferences, user groups. You can write articles, blogs, whatever. There's a whole spectrum of possibilities. And don't think you're not good enough for going to a user group. User groups are so eager to get new topics. You wouldn't imagine how often you're asked if you've held one talk at one user group, then you're asked maybe twice a year from them. Well, don't you have something? We're a bit empty right now. You have something to say. Go on Pluralsight and do something like a 60 hours course and then condense that in 30 minutes, in a talk 30 minutes long. Well, you saved me up 59.5 hours. I love you. It's great. Just bring me this knowledge. And the last part, well, I have to push a bit. Be an inspector. This is what we said this morning, is Hansei, is know yourself. If you don't know yourself, how could you know where you want to go? This is what Confucius said, know what you love, and then you will never work a day in your life. Well, that's true. What do you love? Is it banking software and insurance companies? I don't know. It might be. Or you have something else. It might be solving problems, but you need to know that. And you need to start solving problems, not just making puzzle software. You need to know that because then you are the driver. You know where you want to go and you can steer in this direction. If you don't, well, you're just carried by the flow. And I have a problem with that. Are you a team player? Do you know how to interact with people? Do you know, if we take the Briggs-Meyer profile stuff, if you're a red, do you know how to interact with greens and vice versa? If a guy is really aggressive, how do you keep him from aggressing you and still have a professional discussion? Those are things you need to a little bit understand. You don't need to become an expert in this, but at least understand that this exists. Work parameters, we had from Markus right before in this talk. Are you a remote guy? Are you a standing guy? Are you a sitting guy? Are you a noisy person? Do you need to communicate all the time? Do you need to be pairing or not? All those things you have to try out and know for yourself. If you don't, well, it's luck. You're just following luck. And that I don't accept. It's not okay. You need to be professional. We are political animals. That means we have here Occidental codes. We need to understand what the effect of our words are. I had this example again a few weeks ago. A very senior developer that at the first meeting he had with the domain experts just went in like a I I don't know, like a military guy, and just screw up the whole relationship just by saying how messy things were. I had to work on those persons for weeks to just build up the confidence again so that we can work together. This is unacceptable from a senior developer. This is just unacceptable. There are codes, there are rules, there are things you can do and you shouldn't do, and these you have to start feeling and understanding. You need also to stand your ground. There's one thing that drives me mad, it's, well, the client is king. Well, if the client is doing bullshit, then that's my responsibility to tell him. And then to take action. So all this NSA, Volkswagen, Uber stuff, well, you have to know for yourself, does it stand your ethical grounds or not? And if it doesn't, then be prepared for the next steps. And this is very important. You need to think about this. And I love this one. Purpose, well, it goes a bit with what do you love? A second quote from Scott Hanselman. Well, whatever you're making, whatever software you're making, if it's not saving babies, you need to chill out. Well, if it's saving babies, then you probably don't have enough tests. But whatever. Yeah, put the ball in the middle again. So if you're doing banking software, is it worth not seeing your kids every other night because you come back too late? For me, it's not. Just answer that for yourself. Inquirer, I have to go really fast on this one. Be proactive. You cannot wait for knowledge to come to you. You have to be curious and search for it. You need to experiment, and this is the crescendo of all this presentation. There was experimenting everywhere in the slides. Experiment is the most important. If we don't experiment, then, and it's the idea behind agility, just try baby steps and try a bit in this direction and then in this direction and then in this direction. It's all controlled, it's all baby steps, it's all things that we can try because we're not afraid of that. And all you do must serve this purpose, making baby steps. Iterate. That's the essence of baby stepping. TLDR. Those are 9 of the ideas I'm trying to radiate, and I hope you take them with you and radiate them again. In the book I'm writing, there will be at least 35 more of those. It goes into politics, it goes into ethics, it goes into getting your hands dirty, etc. So there's a lot more. If you are a developer, well, it's your journey, and you have to be in control of it. Otherwise, you're just being carried by the flow. It might end up being good. It might just screw up. We don't know. If you're breeding developers, well, you have to enable. You cannot leave them just being carried by the flow. You have to raise the sparkle and start the discussion with them. And then a bit of marketing slides. If you want to participate to the book, well, we should talk. I'm still doing interviews. If you don't agree, then we must talk. Please come to me. I need to understand your point of view. So really do something. If you want to be a beta reader or follow the project, I push something like every month, some updates. You can register here, developersjourney.info. I swear it, I don't send spam. It's just once a month, some information. And here's all the contact information about myself, about the company I work for here, and about the book itself. And I hope you will radiate wildly. We really need that. Thank you very much.